Hi, and welcome to the Family Peer Specialist Training. And Wanda, I am so happy that you are joining us to be our first group trainee process. Dana and I are going to be here to answer any questions. We may sound a little bit formal, and that is because we are recording this for future use. So today is Family Peer Specialist Certification, Optimizing Organizational Flow to prepare family peer specialists to apply for the national certification. So here are some of the training topics. Optimizing the organizational flow, how to record, keeping and management, preparing the potential certified family peer specialist to meet the training requirements, writing robust lived experience narratives, and verifying work experience. And I know, Wanda, you know that we've done this many, many times in the past. And it seems to be an area just keeping the records and making sure we have that flow. That is where I think a lot of our candidates kind of trip up and they don't realize that they have to really be able to keep those records. I know myself, I used to take a training and then throw them in like, yeah, I got it. I got my little certificate. And then 2 years later, I'm looking for it. So we have to really talk about how to really be organized with that. And our learning objectives. And Dana, if I end up jumping in on your piece, please jump in and stop me.
Sure.
So, of course, at the end of the day, our trainings, I hope you'll be able to understand how we develop a timeline and help your staff develop that timeline and the management tools that support your organization in preparing the family peer specialist for certification. We're going to identify trainings that align with the 5 core competencies. And I know you're from North Carolina, and I know they have their own competencies, but I also understand very clearly that they do align with the national competencies. Share best practices for completing the training documentation form with the candidate, and to improve new employee practices to best support the candidate in the certification process.
All right, so now I'll take over for a second. And our first topic, this training is about organizational flow, record keeping, and management. So we have this image that is really helpful to show people who are going to start this certification process so that they understand all the different components and the timeline. So the very first thing that we really encourage folks to do is to focus on completing that 88 hours of training and to get the training documentation form, which we'll show you later, at the very beginning, to hand that to the candidate so that as they're taking their trainings, they're filling that in. They're not having to search their brain or go back onto the internet and search what the description is or who gave the training or when they took it. So that's kind of the very, very first step, is to do the training and fill in that form. And then the application is online, but there are several different components that you can get ready before opening up that online application and starting to fill that in. So we know that you're probably going to receive a resume or a CV when someone applies to work for you. So you could work with them to revise that resume or CV or create one with them before going into the online application. One component that often needs a lot of support is the lived experience narrative. So working with candidates to write a robust lived experience narrative, which we'll talk about in our next training session. And then there's also a supervisor verification form that you as a supervisor can fill out before they actually apply online or after. That piece is up to you. And then once they gather all those materials, then they're going to want to go online and start to fill out that application. And it can be saved online for 30 days. But if you're not sure if you're ready to hit send, it's best to just kind of keep all of that documentation in a single place, and we'll talk about organizing that in just a second. And then getting online to fill in the contact information, upload the resume, copy over the narrative from this document that you've created, and then upload your training document. There's a code of ethics that they have to agree to, and then the payment happens. And you can choose as an organization to pay the application and exam fee at the same time. Online, when you hit submit, you can send it as a check, and we'll talk about some ideas for organizational flow with that in just a minute. So after your candidate submits the application, then it goes into the review process. And we have a team of folks who reviews the application, and there's often small revisions that are asked, usually around the lived experience narrative, and sometimes around the job description and work experience, and often on the training documentation form as well. So during this training, we'll talk about ways that you can support your candidates so that that revision process is a little bit quicker and maybe doesn't happen at all because they get it all perfectly right the first time. And then once the applicant is approved, then they get to take the 120 online question exam. Any questions about that, Wanda?
When you go into the job description and the resume,
Yeah.
Are there particular things that you're looking for on the resume? And are you looking for specific things in the job description? And is that separate from the narrative?
Those are great questions. And we'll go into a lot more detail on that next time. But the short answer is yes. And the shortest answer is we want to know that they are doing family peer support work. And that needs to be obvious in the resume and the job description.
And so if you have a person who is just beginning into this field, so they don't have previous job experience, then how do we work with them?
So if you've hired them to be a family peer and you're getting them certified, but that's what they've just started doing, that's fine.
Well, what it is you can't take this test until you have 88 hours of training.
Correct.
And during that time, there's an assumption or a hope that they would be at least doing this type of job or doing some elements of the job or doing those competencies that they can include in their resume. For instance, you have a brand new person, never supported another person ever, and he or she wanted to be a family peer specialist, and they come to you and they say, I want to take the trainings. I think it would be really good to, as you're doing your trainings and your courses, to make sure that not only are they getting those 88 hours of actual sit-down learning, but they're also experiencing shadowing a family peer specialist. And you know, Wanda, most people who come to us have been doing this job informally long before they ever took one class. They're helping a neighbor, going with the neighbor to the pediatrician's office, sitting with the neighbor, their best friend at an IEP. That's all family peer specialist work. Mm-hmm. So if they can use language to document that, that would be a good process to start.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. Because sometimes you have new people who have the lived experience, but they're doing it, they're not getting paid to do the work, but they are working with a family member. They are going to the IEP meetings. They are taking them to the therapist. They are going to the doctors. They are going to the child and family team meetings. They're doing all of that. It's not paid work, but they're actually doing that work. That's what I'm saying. Those are the kind of things that you're looking for in the 100%. Job description.
Yeah.
100%. You do not have to be paid. And I know, Dana, you're dying to jump in for one more second. What's most important, even on their resume, I think, or their bios, is to really, really stress that they are a person of lived experience and they can talk about it.
And Wanda, to become nationally certified, they do have to have 500 hours of
Correct.
family peer work. So even if their job title is not family peer specialist at that moment, and you're hoping to get them certified so you can move them into that position, you as a supervisor are still going to sign a form that says they have done 500 or more hours of this work, and 20 of that has been supervised.
Correct.
Okay.
Because I have, for example, I was speaking with one of the people who they've done their 88 hours and they're not working full time, but they are supporting other individuals. Like I made a phone call this morning because they're working with a family member who's going through a custody issue. They're having some issues with child support. They're having some other issues. And so this person has reached out to this family, and with what they've learned in their training, they're able to go with them to court. They're able to help them download the right documents. They were able to help them find the documents. They were able to sit with this other family person and help them fill out the forms. All of those things is that family support work. And so she needs to be able to document that. And I'm able to watch her do that as a result. And she tells me all the time, because of the classes that I've taken, I now know how to support people in ways that I would have never done before.
Yes, exactly.
So it's recording all of that in those hours.
Absolutely. Yes.
And so my final question to that is, do you need that documented in a format, or just monitoring the hours and making sure that it's being done? Like, how did you record that back?
Yeah, we'll go over that next time in depth, but it's a form. It's a form that you fill out. We don't need you to document 12 hours doing this, 13 hours doing that. Not at all. Okay.
And I've seen that form with the 500 hours, okay. I think I've seen that form. Okay. Thank you.
All righty. So next I pulled out the different deliverables. So these are the actual documents that we are going to need. So it's good to just have these as kind of a checklist for your staff. And I've got a tracker I'll show you that you could help keep track of this in just a minute. But that first one is the training documentation form. And later on today, we'll go over some best practices for filling that out. Then having the resume as a PDF or a Word document, the lived experience narrative and the work experience narrative or job description, those you're going to be copying and pasting into the online form. But I always tell candidates it's great to have that in a Word document, because if you do need to revise it, it's a lot easier if you have it on a document itself rather than trying to copy paste from the application. And then that supervisor verification form, which is an online document, and then the online application. Those are kind of all the different forms and deliverables that you will need to complete the application. And so it's something that you as a supervisor can decide when is best to introduce each of these components, because it can feel kind of overwhelming to think about all of these things that they need to have. So like I mentioned before, I recommend introducing that training documentation form first, so that when they are newly hired and you're having them taking trainings, they are literally leaving that training, opening up the form and filling it in, so that all of that information that's fresh in their mind goes right there. So that's kind of the one I recommend doing first. And the resume and CV is something they likely have already recently updated. And then you as a supervisor can kind of decide how and when to introduce the other components that are needed.
Wanda, that we're not looking at a quality resume, because we're not looking at a resume that has to be extremely polished.
Right.
Just something that really documents what folks do, and really emphasize to them not to get scared, because you hear the word CV and that freaks even me out. It was, oh my God, I got you can downplay that as long as they document their jobs. Cashier, talking people. Yeah,
I think the biggest struggle that folks have with the resume piece is if they're new in the field, not having like work experience, paid
Mhm.
work experience in this field. So
Mhm.
taking, like, they currently might work at a nursing facility, for
Mhm.
example. They might be a full-time nurse, but because they are also a caregiver, how do they take that resume that says I'm a full-time nurse and been a full-time nurse for 20 years, and then put onto that resume the information that's required to show that they've done the work as far as a family partner as well, making that
Right,
connection.
right. And if you look at the competencies on our website,
Mm-hmm.
and you can tell the candidates, well, you know, you are working in Home Depot and you're helping people come in and you do this
Mm-hmm.
and you do that. What competencies do these cover?
Mhm.
How are they related? It's the same thing when you get a new job after you graduate from college. You're not going to have really that experience as a psychologist, even though
Mm-hmm.
you have the degree, because
Mhm.
you haven't had that real experience. So you pull it from the internships, you
Mhm.
know, what you've done. Same kind of
Gotcha.
thing.
Okay, that makes sense.
All right, I'm going to pass it. Oops, I went too far, but I'm going to pass it to Gail.
Well, we're trying to think of how to organize. And obviously, I know in the past we've used the accordion file, the little slots, so you could put, your resumes. You don't need to go to college. You do not need transcripts, but if you have those, in there, each compartment, and this is typical, same old stuff, but you can have it as a hard copy. Nowadays, too, everything comes USB, like if you take a course online, we send you a virtual certificate of completion. So you might want to use a USB, drive to hold it and keep it for you want. A binder, definitely your computer files. That's how I keep all my stuff now. I don't even
Mm-hmm.
think I have drives anymore. Just keep them on and send you an email if you need them with attachments. But these are many ways you can you can encourage individuals to really use. I recommend, though, honestly, get, just because of my experience, get family peer specialists really used to being virtual and online. Because I know that that's a scary thing for a lot of people new in the field. Is this me too?
This is you too, yes.
Okay. Um, you're really good at this because I've seen you. But, ask the interview questions, stop practicing with them. You know, as you ask them questions and you give them you provide your leadership and give them a real clear understanding of what lived experiences, how to talk about it, how to go about it. You know, this piece here really, a good leader knows how to do that. And Wanda, I've been bragging about you for the last 6 or 7 months, well, forever, but in the last 6 or 7 months, people have asked me who's a leader in North Carolina. I say Wanda. So,
Thank you.
partner with other
Mhm.
certified family peer specialists, with the candidate who's currently applying. Something we really did really well in North Carolina was, do you remember when Tika and Casey would come up and do technical assistance? I know you were located in Charlotte, but they used to
Mhm.
come up and we used to hold office hours at North Carolina Families United, and individual candidates who were applying would come in and either meet with Tika or Casey, and they would help them get their paperwork together. So, mentoring kind of roles like that. And get to know your staff member before hitting submit on the application. I know you do. I mean, these are all things that you go, yes, Gail, I do those.
Yeah, but and it does make a big difference. Like, we did our training together, but then I now meet with them individually, one-on-one, and they bring in their folder, their notebook with all of their stuff, and we walk through. I take them to the National Federation website and I walk them through the process and the steps. And some I have to help with the documentation forms. And so getting that mentoring piece is really important, and it helps them build their confidence too.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. All right, so I'll jump in here about the money. It's something that can get a little fuzzy when you're certifying a large number of folks, because there's the $50 application fee, which has to be paid before we even look at it. So if I receive an application and the application fee hasn't been paid, I just reach out to that person and let them know I'll review the application once I have that application fee. And then there's also the $300 exam fee. The $50 application fee is not refundable. So if you send an application and you pay that fee, if that person does not end up becoming a certified family peer specialist, your organization does not get that money back. The $300 exam fee is refundable. So if you decided to pay both of the fees at the same time for an applicant, and once they got through that application process, we determined that they actually weren't eligible to be certified, we can refund that $300. So there's basically 3 ways to pay. The one that most people do is to pay the $350 at one time when they submit their application online. And there is just a spot to enter your credit card information, and you automatically get a receipt sent to your email. And that's generally the way that most people pay that fee. Then you can also pay by check. And you can do that. I can send you an invoice if you need invoicing for your grants or whatever reason. I can send you an invoice, or you can ask for an invoice and then later pay by credit card over the phone. So those are the kind of 3 choices that most organizations go for. And then there are some organizations that know that they are going to have this pot of money that's just for certification, and they're going to be certifying a lot of people over a number of years. So they just write NFF a check for $5,000, let's say, and we say, okay, even if our exam fees change, you're locked in at that $350 price, and we're gonna say this is for X number of certifications, and I start a spreadsheet to kind of keep track of who is using that money. So those are kind of the options, and you just decide what works best for your organization.
Cool.
Any questions about that?
No, that's pretty self-explanatory.
Okay, doke. So it's very helpful to have some kind of organizational processes that help you keep track of where all of your different staff members are on this journey. And some tips that we have are to keep checking in with your staff about what's working in the process, especially as you make changes to the process of how to manage all of these certifications. And another thing I recommend is to make sure that once a family peer gets certified, they know that they're certified for 3 years, and that they need 44 hours of training to recertify. And it's helpful to go ahead and start that new training documentation form early again for those same reasons. And then for you as a leader of a family-run organization, it's important for you to keep track of where everybody is. So I've got this spreadsheet that I'm going to send you as a sample tracker that you can change to fit your needs. But these are just some of the key things to keep in mind as you're keeping track of everybody. So having, their names and emails, and thinking about when they got hired. And once you have them as a staff member, you setting a goal of when you'd like them to be certified. And then just kind of logging all the different steps, how many hours they have, whether they've done their resume, whether they have their lived experience and work experience narratives, then putting in when their application was submitted so that you can come back to us if you haven't heard from us in a month. Hey, John Smith sent in his application. We haven't heard from you. It does take between 6 to 8 weeks, depending on what we're doing at NFF. Like around conference time, it's going to take a little bit longer, but that's about our turnaround period is 6 to 8 weeks. And then you're going to want to also keep track of who's been paid for, what has been paid, just the application fee, just the exam fee, both. And then, when they've taken the exam and then when they expire. So that's
And
just one.
there's something
That's good. I like that.
that you should keep in mind too. I think a lot of family peer specialists, and I can think of some in your state, that are more nervous about taking the test than they are to fill out the paperwork. And
Yes.
you have heard me. I have said the paperwork is the hardest piece. And I've said that all along. So that's why we're really focusing on that. But the test, if you're actually doing this and you've listened in your trainings, the test is honestly a piece of cake. You've taken it. Was it that hard?
It was not.
Yeah,
But again, it comes from, having years of experience prior to the test. And I think for folks who are just getting started in the field, that's where that intimidation comes, because even though they've been going to IEP meetings, or they've been, working with their family or themselves, with their therapist or whatever, it's still hard for them to put two and two together.
Mhm.
right. I think the two things that are the best piece of advice for people who are afraid to take the test. I always say you have 120 questions in 120 minutes. But think of how long 60 minutes, 60 seconds is. It's a pretty long time to think. So most people get this test done in about 45 to 50 minutes. Most people, not everybody, but 1 minute is a long time for each answer. So don't get nervous about that. And the second thing, this is a big hint, and I have never, ever seen the questions, but I know from the philosophy of the Federation of Families and for family peer specialists, if you keep in mind person-centered, family-driven, you'll answer the questions correctly. It's always not what you think a parent should do, but how you support a parent making those choices.
Right.
All right, I'm going to pass it back to you, Gail.
Well, here's perfect timing. Preparing the candidate to meet the training requirements. So we have the 5 core competencies. And again, if they're taking trainings in the 5 core competencies, they're pretty much all set. And I know in North Carolina, you do Copeland's, RAP, wellness, recovery, action. So that's wellness and resiliency. Affecting change. It's child and family team 1 and 2, isn't it? Is that the mandatory?
Well, we're doing 1 right now. We don't have a 2, but we had a 2, but we just need to upgrade the 2. But
Okay,
definitely
so
CFT1.
CFT1 is affecting change, right? Key meetings, understanding, resources and natural supports. Most of the folks you get come from the system of care philosophy, so they know what natural supports are. In every training across the board, it explains what a natural support is. System knowledge and navigation. I know in North Carolina, you do the Family Peer 101, which teaches that pretty clearly. And it also teaches resources and natural support. And Family Partner 101 also teaches professional responsibilities. There's a big piece in there, especially around ethics. So you know that if you do motivational interviewing, where it teaches you not to tell people what to do, but to get their answers from them, that's affecting change. Wellness recovery, child and family team, Family Partner 101, and a trauma. If they take those 5 mandatory trainings that are supporting the state of North Carolina, they're going to be okay in this.
Absolutely.
And when you get these slides, Wanda, if you click this little learn more, it'll take you right to the page on our website has all of the lists of the job tasks under each competency. So it's really easy to match up some trainings that work with those job tasks.
Absolutely.
Ab-
And that's the same thing that's on the Federation website. When you look
Yes.
at the competencies, if you click
Yep.
the down button, it has all the information there too, right?
That's what this link
Absolutely.
will go to. Yes.
Okay.
And for those who are not from the state of North Carolina, you just press the button and you'll get all the ideas. So does this training count? Does the training directly relate to the daily work of a family peer? You have to think about that when they take their training. Am I doing your part?
Nope, this is you.
Oh, okay. I thought it was. Um, will the training support one of the 5 core competencies? We just talked about that. Is the training that a family peer working at any organization would benefit from? And again, because you're from North Carolina, and I know North Carolina, you have to take 2 electives. And those
Mhm.
2 electives should always be relevant for the specialty work. If you're going to be a family peer specialist in a school system, maybe you take a 504, an ADA, or an IEP, or school-based mental health training. If you're going to work in the juvenile justice, maybe you want to take one of the juvenile justice trainings. Child welfare is the same thing. You may want a special type. If you're doing the 0 to 5 group, there's a lot of 0 to 5 trainings in around. Also look at who is delivering the training. That's really important.
Mhm.
It's most effective if it's someone with lived experience who is delivering the training. Now, not all trainings will be fortunate enough to have a person with lived experience. For example, motivational interviewing, you can get a clinician who doesn't even have any children. And the training will be relevant. But like I said, the more trainings you can get with trainers who have that lived experience, the better experience and training you're going to get for your field.
Absolutely.
And one
Are
No,
there state-specific trainings that are required? We went over that. Go ahead, Dana.
And one thing to really key in on this slide too is the 3rd bullet there. Is this a training that a family peer working at any organization would benefit from taking? Sometimes people put new employee orientation information on the training document. And if this is about telling me what your organization does, what your employee hierarchy is, introducing the employee to management, that's not going to count. That's a new employee orientation. That's not going to help them do family peer work
Right.
as a certified peer.
Right. But if you did something like mental health first aid,
yes, that would absolutely count.
That's something that
Yeah.
you can use across the board.
Yeah. If it's a special training that your organization does that talks about how family peers go out into the community to reach people, that might be specific to your organization, but they could take that and apply it at another organization. So that would still count. So it's just really differentiating what's introducing my employee to my organization versus what's helping them learn skills so that they can become a family peer specialist.
And if it's just specific to the organization, it really doesn't need to be on this training document, does it?
Right, exactly. Yeah, you do not need to tell us all the training that they have done. If they've done 150 hours of training, that's fabulous. We need to know about at least 88 hours of those.
Okay.
But it'll be faster for you if you put 88 hours instead of 150 because you'll get it reviewed quicker.
Right. And they can take the other ones and start doing their preparing for the recertifications.
Right. Exactly. And on this slide, you'll see a link down here to the training documentation form exemplar. So online on our certification website, we have a link to this document that I took various trainings from real training documentation forms that were submitted, and I picked kind of the best of the best where I felt like these were trainings that really exemplified what we're looking for. They copy pasted the description of the training in there, and they gave a really good description of what they learned. So that's something you can give to folks before they start filling out their own training documentation form so they know what we're looking for.
Is that the one that's on the website now?
It is. It's on the website now, and it's also linked here.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Yep. And
'Cause
so,
that's-
oh,
yeah.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, because that's the one I printed out and that's the one that I've been sharing with them so
Yeah.
that they'll have a good example of how to complete it and answer the questions.
Perfect. Yes. Yes. We uploaded that earlier this year. So as long as you got it from 2023, you should be good.
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. So now I just want to kind of demystify all of the different components of the training documentation form. Once again, urging you to introduce this to your candidates early and going through all of the different components and what NFF is looking for. So the trainings have to have occurred within the past 5 years for new applicants. When it's recertifications, it needs to be in the last 3 years. Then we want to know the title of the training. If they went to a conference or a training series, it's like part 1, 2, and 3. We want to know each session separately. That's going to help us determine whether or not it truly counts. We really do want you to copy and paste the full training description. So when you see it on a flyer or on an agenda, on a website, on a syllabus, like copy and paste that whole description so that we have exactly what the trainer themselves told you the training was going to be about. When you're filling in the names and the credentials, we do want to know if they have provided you with a degree or a certification, put that in there, especially when the credential is CFPS. That helps us know, like, okay, this is going to be very, very applicable to us. You would think we wouldn't need to say this, but put the number of hours that matches what is in the description of the training or on the website. I've gotten a lot of people who've told me things from our own conference are twice as long as I know they are because I was there. So just emphasize to them, like, don't try to pad your training, because most of the trainings we get, it's the same trainings from different organizations. So we know how many hours a wrap training is. Don't put 30 there because we know that's not right. Then another thing is that they need to fill out this blue section that says what they learned. It should be the applicant writing what they learned. I don't want to see a supervisor who's filled out these documents for their staff members that says CFPS learned, because that tells me that they did not sit there and reflect on how to apply that. It's somebody else who's filling this out for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a real key, Wanda. First of all, we get that a lot, which is blowing to me, because it says that their supervisor doesn't have confidence in the individual to do their own work. And I think that making sure that the candidate is doing this work and shows competency that they can write in and answer these questions is really important. And honestly, really respectful.
Yeah, so I mean, so basically that shouldn't be a cookie cutter answer. That one should be different for every individual, because
Yes.
I may have learned something from that training that you didn't get, or
Yes.
vice versa.
Mhm.
And it's still relevant to the training, but what stood out to me may not stand out to the next person in the same training.
Exactly.
Okay.
And another thing that I send it right back if I see that they took the first line of the description of the training and copied and pasted it down into the learning and just changed the beginning to be I learned blah 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 blah. Like, no,
Oh, okay.
You did not reflect on that. You just copied the training. And that, I mean, frankly, I know that happens a lot because they're not filling this out as they do the training. They took a training 2 years ago and they don't fully remember what they learned from that training. And then I also see sometimes people have copied and pasted the first learning that they put in that first training into all the rest and just changed 1 or 2 words. So the purpose of doing this exercise is to show that you can retain knowledge and you can share it out with other people, because that's a skill that family peers need. Family peers are required to do some documentation. They have to take accurate notes of the services that they're providing for families. So we want to see in this training document, how good are you at taking accurate notes and being able to convey what you've learned to us, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last thing that some people kind of miss is, I see a lot of times we want to see a wide range of competencies. And sometimes people just pick one for each training. But like Gail was saying earlier, most trainings are going to hit more than one competency. So I like to see it when, I don't like it when people put all 5 for all trainings, because that's not true either.
Mm-hmm.
But just really putting in a little bit of effort and really thinking through, what competencies does this training actually address?
For example, like motivational interviewing, that could be affecting change,
Mm-hmm.
but it also could be professional responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And also, motivational interviewing can bring up what resources you have, what natural supports you have.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Because you're asking all of those questions and getting them to think through versus the part where you do with and not do for, and you're helping them
Yep.
to find out who else in their circle can help them get from where they are
Right.
to where they want to be.
Yep.
Right. I would think it would be everything except for systems knowledge and navigation, really, because wellness
Wellness and
and
resiliency as
resiliency
well.
is a definite. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so that makes sense. And I think that was going to be a question I was going to ask you earlier and I forgot. So that makes sense.
Yeah. Any other questions about filling out a robust training documentation form?
No, I was truly thinking about that last one. What did you learn? That should not be a cut and paste kind of scenario. The rest of it to me was pretty much cut and paste. If you have the
Yeah.
certificate, you've got the name, you've got the title, you've got the number of hours, all of that should be on the certificate itself.
It should.
So all of that should be easy.
Mm-hmm.
Making sure you match the competencies was important, and then what you learned on an individual basis
Mm-hmm.
is
Yeah.
the key for each individual training. And you'll have one of these for every certificate.
Yep, exactly. And, I think some people get caught up because we say be brief, but we also say use a bulleted list or write a few sentences. And I can't tell you how many times people write 6 words here and they think it's enough. And we want you to be succinct. We don't want you to write us an essay about what you learned, but we also do want to know you did learn something really concrete and applicable here. If you took a training called Brain Basics and you tell me I learned basics about the brain, that does not tell me what you learned. Tell me what you learned about the brain, and how the key is, how are you going to apply this as a certified family peer specialist?
Right. Okay. That
All
makes
right.
sense.
This me? Yeah, this is me. So then we've got some tips to help you demystify training for yourself and deciding which trainings are best for you to offer your employees. So the first tip is, if you're not already an NFF affiliate, sometimes those folks offer trainings themselves. If they don't offer trainings themselves, they might know where to go to get free trainings that are available from the state mental health agency or another entity within the state. So that's always a great place to start. It's really helpful if you just already require certain trainings in the new employee onboarding process. That just makes it streamlined and easy. You probably already need some required training, so kind of making sure that those count on the training documentation form as much as possible can just make the process smoother. It can be helpful for you as an organization to create some kind of training manual that might have checklists, that has all those documents that they need, that has projected timelines of where you'd like them to be in the process at different times, and then lists out the trainings that they have to take, and then maybe some that they can choose from. If you have some that are in person and offered by your organization or your state, but then it doesn't quite add up to 88, we have a list on the website that's linked here that has a bunch of free online training. Some of them are live and some of them are recorded. We actually also have a couple of courses on the National Federation of Families website that's linked there, but anything that you would see coming out of NAFSTAC would count towards certification. And then we have specific SAMHSA training centers that you can usually find something that counts. And if you're ever curious, just shoot me an email. Hey, I saw this training, would this count? And I'm happy to weigh in on that. Another great way to get some hours is to come to our annual conference, though every single session there would count for training. And then just keep in mind that when they recertify, they need 44 hours of training. And both for the initial application and the recertification, up to 20 hours can be them delivering trainings. So that comes more into play with the recertification.
Yeah, that would apply for me because a lot of times I'm doing the training and I'm like, okay, so do I get my certificate for me as well?
Yep, you do. Any question on those?
Nope.
All right, we're getting to the end here. So just to summarize some of the more important things that we talked about that's going to really help you develop that organizational flow and system to reach your organizational goals is that we want it to be really, really specific to what your goals are. So you decide how and when to introduce that process, the different things that are deliverables that they have to turn in, and your timeline. You decide how you want to keep track of all the different things that you've got to keep in your head: payments, application status, and expiration. You as an organization think about which trainings are going to best support the family peers, when and how you're going to deliver them, and what it looks like to support them in completing the training documentation form. And then think about how hiring, onboarding, and supervision practices can support those applicants as well. So that is all we have for you in terms of the training. I'm going to stop the recording.